Hello, I'm Robert Kelly, and today on Record All Monsters, Mothra, Shinichi Sekizawa, and the religious significance of monsters.
See, isn't that the same sign here and here?
The subject
and here?
of the whole inscription, I think. And the key. And through the use of analogies with the various Polynesian dialects, I think I was able to decipher it.
What is this key word?
Mothra.
Mothra? What's it mean?
I don't know.
In 1958, Toho had made a mediocre giant monster movie called Varan, the Unbelievable, that had initially been commissioned by the American TV production company ABPT, who promptly went out of business and left Toho holding the bag. They finished the movie and released it to theaters, making back their money, but they didn't really consider it an artistic or financial success. They were impressed, however, with the humorous but appropriate dialogue with which screenwriter Shinichi Sekizawa peppered the fairly standard monster movie's script. He had been hired to write for Toho after penning an alien invasion flick for the rival Beehive Studios in 1956. After writing Varan, Sekizawa wrote two more sci-fi films for Toho: Battle in Outer Space, an exciting and lively alien invasion movie, where much of the action takes place on Earth's moon, and The Secret of the Telegian, a horror revenge movie about a teleporting man killing soldiers who left him for dead during the war. Telegian, coincidentally, is the first time we're seeing future Godzilla director Jun Fukuda, as it was his directorial debut. But let's get back to Shinichi Sekizawa. While his screenplay was adapted from a serialized short story called Mothra and Her Luminous Fairies, written by Shinichiro Nakamura, Takehito Fukunaga, and Yoshi Hota, Sekizawa truly put his stamp on it. The Luminous Fairies story was about 4 fairies, an explicitly political message, and according to Steve Reifel and Edgard Zuzki's commentary on Mill Creek's recent Blu-ray release, had no cohesion due to its having 3 authors. Sekizawa streamlined the story overall, cutting the number of fairies down to 2, saving the political drama for the last act, and most stunningly of all, introducing a human villain in Jerry Ito's Charles Nelson. While human hubris, egoism, and general boneheadedness had all contributed to the character's woes in previous Japanese kaiju movies, and in giant monster movies in general, the monsters were always the villains. The movies were about stopping the monsters. Even Gorgo, earlier the same year, is framed to make us expect the monster to rampage after being captured and put on display a la King Kong, before subverting our expectations and revealing his mother to be on a rescue mission. The inciting incident in Mothra immediately results in a threat. If Nelson takes the fairies from their island, Mothra will come and save them, and no one in the way will be spared. In July of 1961, Mothra does many of the same things that Gorgo did back in March, but doesn't bother with all of the explanations or attempts to ground us in reality. This is in part because of the charm of Sekizawa's writing. He understands fairy tales well and introduces the rules of that genre into the giant monster movie effortlessly. And like the best fairy tales, we are expected to accept the unusual aspects of the story as they come, and we simply roll with the weird stuff. Not only that, but by making the hero a monster and the villain a human, he allows us to openly root for the monster, just like we've all been secretly doing this whole time. And this is really Mothra's greatest significance. It centers the monster as the hero, while still recognizing that it is a force of nature, a god with a lowercase g. It gives them an almost religious role. Think about ancient stories of heroes and saints as conduits of whatever attribute of God is supposed to be on display in the story. They act upon the narrative, exerting their will on the human characters, who can either accept and facilitate it, or oppose it and face the consequences. Whatever you believe, Mothra is coming to punish Nelson, and anyone else who stands in the way of justice, which is, by definition, the restoration of that which is owed. The beautiful song of Mothra, sung by her fairies in Nelson's review, is their prayer for not only their own salvation, but the punishment of the wicked. He may as well ask them to sing that sooner or later God's gonna cut him down. Sekizawa handles these heavy themes with a light touch that makes for an extremely entertaining and fun movie. With his addition to the team of special effects filmmakers at Toho, Sekizawa provided an ally to Eiji Tsuburaya, who I swear we will talk about in depth. Believe me, I really want to talk about Eiji Tsuburaya. Sekizawa's light scripts gave the monsters more well-defined personalities, something Tsuburaya had been wanting to do, and would do in his own work with his TV production company. The future of the series would come to embrace Sekizawa's vision, and he became its primary writer, eventually penning the screenplays or stories for 10 of the 15 movies in the original Godzilla series, and the pilot episode of Ultraman. I'd be remiss if I failed to mention the gorgeous score in this movie, which was not composed by the maestro of monster music, Akira Ifukube, but by Yuji Koseki, who had already written music for the pop duo The Peanuts, aka Emi and Yumi Ito, who were playing Mothra's fairies. Heretofore in this work, Record All Monsters referred to as the Shobijin, a name coined by Sekizawa meaning little beauties. While Koseki's work on Mothra is gorgeous and suits the film perfectly, Ifukube had already created the powerful and iconic theme for Godzilla, as well as another beautiful score for the otherwise mediocre Varan the Unbelievable. Now look at that, we've come full circle. Tomoyuki Tanaka, Ishiro Honda, Shinichi Sekizawa, Akira Ifukube, and Eiji Tsuburaya were now all in place to make what would become the highest grossing film of the original Godzilla series, which is still the most widely attended Godzilla film, and one of the most famous movies of all time.
Who is Mothra? What is Mothra? Why does all the world fear Mothra? They found him on an island in the remote Pacific, a monster cave creature discovered by a group of the world's leading scientists, worshipped as a god by the tiniest, loveliest women in all creation, sacred beauties of a lost tribe. See how he stands unscathed by tanks, artillery, dive bombers, rockets, all powerless against his devastating death ray. See how he eludes capture in his impenetrable cocoon, which no human force can open. See him unleash, with a single tremendous breath, the Earth's most fearsome hurricanes, wrecking trains and ships, uprooting bridges and buildings, wreaking havoc on land and sea, thrilling you, chilling you, holding you spellbound. What is the secret of Mothra? Insatiable, indestructible, indescribable. The screen's most fantastic dramatic spectacle, Mothra.
Hello, I'm Robert Kelly, and welcome back to Record All Monsters. We are here, of course, with my wife and producer, Courtney.
Hi.
And our special guest today is our good friend and noted gaming streamer, Austin, Pfhorbear, Douglas Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
So, Austin, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm very happy to have you. And, second of all, for people who don't know, what is it you do in the creative?
Yeah, I occasionally write for gaming websites. I've written for The Outer Haven. I've written for Best Game Ever Co. UK, which is now defunct, unfortunately. And my primary, my bread and butter, the things that people would know me as Pfhorbear on, are my YouTube videos and my streams. Most of my YouTube stuff is about Halo. It's all video games. I do a little bit of stuff for other games, a little bit of Destiny, a little bit of variety stuff, but primarily gaming videos and streams.
All right. So, people may be wondering, why are you here to talk about Mothra?
Oh, because Robert Kelly is the coolest person and loves kaiju movies. Robert, you and I met through a mutual friend who has a shared love for Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
So we play Dungeons and Dragons basically weekly, and I got to learn about your infatuation with kaiju stuff, and I have a bit of a history doing podcasty things, so it was like a cool opportunity for us to get together and talk about something that you're super into.
Yeah, I'm super stoked for this, actually. At the end of our last full episode, I was like, we're going to talk to about Mothra.
It's very exciting.
So what, if any, background do you have with giant monster movies?
Primarily like the late 90s revival of Godzilla. Not anything I've ever considered myself necessarily a fan of, but one of those things that if I was ever flipping through channels on TV and saw that something was on, I would definitely hang out and watch it at least for a little while. It's a genre that I've always been curious about, but never so curious to like pursue it on my own. I think it's really cool. I like big fights in movies. I think that the kaiju stuff is neat. I don't have much of a personal history with it, though.
So coming in with just nothing really but cultural osmosis.
Right.
How did Mothra strike you?
It wasn't what I was expecting it to be. I was expecting something more akin to, like, I'm gonna get the name of the movie wrong, but the Peter Jackson King Kong movie.
King Kong.
Is that all it was
That's all
called?
it's called.
Love it. Like something that has like a lighthearted nature to it, but has like extremely serious overtones. And was delighted at how enjoyable and lighthearted and funny Mothra was. Like there were like stakes and stuff, but I was thoroughly impressed with how silly it was at times, both intentionally and maybe unintentionally.
And it has like some dark undertones, like capitalism.
Oh yeah.
But the whole movie is very airy.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said, the capitalism undertones or overtones, but the the whole movie seems like a big slap in the face of Western civilization for dropping nuclear bombs on people, which I'm definitely into that. Not the dropping the bombs, the slapping people in the face for doing it. That's what I'm into.
So, anything in particular on this first viewing of Mothra stand out, like something noteworthy?
I mean, I was charmed. It makes me want to watch more of these movies, especially the older ones. So many things these days are so serious. I'm a huge fan of DC and like Superman specifically, and love a Superman, but like just find myself rolling my eyes at like DCEU movies. As much as I enjoy them and they're like cool and they have cool fight scenes, like just so serious. And so finding that these movies are like I've been saying, like super lighthearted and like well natured. I was very, very impressed. I look forward to watching more of these.
That's good to hear, because we want to have you back in a little while to watch the sequel to this.
I'm very excited about that. It's Mothra versus
Godzilla.
Yeah.
From 3 years later.
Okay. So about on par with the effects that we saw in Mothra?
Yeah, I think they're a little better in this movie for the most part.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
It was a little tired.
We talked about it a bit while we were watching the movie.
Mm-hmm.
How there are some things that, the artifice is deliberate, and some things that maybe they just didn't have the budget. Mm-hmm. Or it definitely wasn't that they didn't have the ability, because it's...
No, absolutely. I equated it while we were watching it to something that's near and dear to my heart, which is back when the first Halo game was being developed. One of the art leads at Bungie told the founder, Jason Jones, that he thought it was lame that Jason wanted the aliens to be more and more colorful. Mm-hmm. Like brighter pinks, brighter blues, like go hard on the purple. And the art lead was like, man, this sucks. No one's going to like this. This is so dumb. And then the game released, and it's one of the things that Halo fans enjoy so much about those games is how colorful they are. And then him being like, man, I was just wrong. Jason was right. Like, people like colorful aliens to shoot at. and to equate it to the movie, like, yeah, of course these effects are, like, cheesy in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. But they hit in a way that is calming. Like, the action sequences are cool and intense, but there is a level of that, like, that artifice that you mentioned that gives it this really cool cheesy aesthetic that you can get into and lose yourself in as like, oh, I'm not watching a movie, I'm a part of what's going on right now. Mm-hmm. And then like a shot of a bird flying by instead of obviously what is supposed to be Mothra. Just like, oh man, I love this so much.
Yeah, no, this is one of my favorite ones. Our previous episode we talked about Gorgo, and I wanted to come to you on this one, Courtney. Mm-hmm. There are some broad similarities between this and Gorgo. Mm-hmm. How did that sit with you, like, when you were watching it this time?
I think it's more in the fact that... Sorry, my lens fell out of my glasses frame. It's more in the fact that the people who were trying to make money did not respect the lore/religion of the people that lived on the islands. In Gorgo, it was Ireland. In this one, it was Infant Island. Mm-hmm. And it's just sort of adds to that, like, anti-exploitation of, basically, capitalism should not be
unchecked.
Yes, and it, like with the fairies, they knew...
There's fairies in this movie, people.
Like, they knew that Mothra was going to come for them, and they were like, you guys have been really nice. I'm sorry, because Mothra is going to, like, destroy everything to come for us. Like, it was like, it's a real religion to them, and I feel like they had the people who stole them away didn't even, like, give it a second thought. Mm-hmm.
To touch on something about that, it has, like, a really cool theme, and, like, if we look at it so bluntly as like, universally capitalism, which I'm into that. I'm into those themes. It's like, this has a consequence, and it doesn't matter if you're a byproduct of it or directly involved with it. Mm-hmm. You have to suffer those consequences.
Yeah.
So it's just better left undone rather than, like, hoping that it works out. I loved that. I loved all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what you were saying, Courtney, what we talked about with Gorgo as well, the people not respecting this other religion because it's not part of the larger culture.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's something we see in America a lot right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But also for Eiji Tsuburaya, the effects director who was working on this film, he was a Catholic convert in Japan. So I like to think he brought a little more pathos to that than there was in Gorgo. Because Gorgo, it's kind of something you have to read into. Mm-hmm. But by the end of Mothra, they're like, explicitly, oh, it's a religion! Mothra's their god!
Totally. It's so interesting because the movie's not set up to be to like already exist in a world where like Godzilla's a thing. Mm-hmm. There's no reference to it whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Them dealing with Mothra is like everyone reacts to it like it's the first time they've ever seen anything like this, which is interesting and keeps the movie like well self-contained, and it's not something we see a lot of anymore, unfortunately. If you didn't watch WandaVision, then like good luck on the next MCU movie kind of thing. It's really interesting to see those religious themes throughout it. Like you were saying, like it is something that we're dealing with a lot today. Like we're starting to see a lot more impact, and I don't know how specific I should or should not be, but a lot of impact around like Muslim communities, and I almost feel bad saying we're starting to see it because it's obviously been a thing for 20 years or more now.
But it's starting to be something that can't really be hidden, that is affecting the broader culture.
It's present. It's way more present than it has been. For people who are like me and like to think they're more woke than they are, whereas people who are actually suffering with that have been suffering with it for so long. So it was like a really interestingly timed thing for you to have me watch, Robert.
Oh. Good. Good. Learn and grow from it.
Yeah. I'm a better person because that's how Mothra.
you know, we're joking, but I really do think that having fairy tales in particular.
Oh, absolutely.
This is a fairy tale. Having stories like that in a culture and really talking about them, I think, does broaden people's sense of empathy.
Absolutely.
Like having these kind of stories and having adults reflect on them as well. C.S. Lewis, who, mixed bag, as most men of his time are.
Right.
But he says somewhere that someday you'll be old enough to start reading fairy tales again.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is
that's a lovely thing.
A big that.
Yeah.
This is a big that.
I love that. Yeah, totally. And like it's so funny for parents to like force feed their kids like cartoons and fairy tales and things that maybe they're not ready for yet, or maybe things that they've been watching for so long already. And then for them to just completely miss the message on a lot of that stuff.
Well, the parents and the kids alike.
Yeah. I mean, a kid's not going to learn anything from it if the parent can't reinforce it.
Right. They're not going to learn that the point of Sleeping Beauty is people, learning to love unselfishly.
Right.
If no one points that out.
Yeah.
They're not going to learn that from the Disney movie without someone saying, oh, he had to the prince had to sacrifice a lot to be able to go save her and work with outside forces. And,
absolutely.
Surrender to the fact that this is bigger than him and he needs help. And, if you're not looking for that stuff, a lot of critiques people have of fairy tales are their simplicity, but a lot, like with the effects in this movie, they're very simple. They're very obvious. Like, of course, we're just going to build a model of Tokyo Tower and slap it with a moth puppet.
Yeah, the moth larva spits at the helicopter and it falls out of the air. And
it just looks like a kid dropped it, and I love it.
But it's effective.
100%. It gets the point across, and it's like not overly complicated. It's like you understand that this helicopter fell out of the sky.
Right.
Why try harder than that?
Yeah.
Because the point isn't how does the helicopter look.
Right.
The point is we're messing with something that has this power.
Right. That has the capability to swat a helicopter out of the sky with like some like real long spit. Basically. I mean, like obviously not, but like the idea that it's like there's so many little things like that. Like The funniest thing is, and like the reference I'm going to use, is a movie that my dad loves, and it's Shrek. And like the whole like you have to love yourself unconditionally, and it's okay to want yourself to be a different person or to look a different way. But at the end of the day, like you are who you are, and you should love yourself regardless. And that's something that like, as funny as it is, like my stepmom has only recently kind of come to terms with. And I was like, you've seen this movie hundreds of times. You watch it with my father all the time against her wishes. But like to pick up a lesson in a fairy tale in like a movie so easily, after she should have gotten it the first time, you know, that's the importance of like those stories being told and being watched and listened, not just when you're a kid, not the first time you see it, but 10, 15, 20 years later on your 100th viewing of it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good note to end this portion of the show on.
Absolutely.
So we're going to take a quick break, go to an ad, probably just playing the trailer for Mothra, but maybe I'll throw something else in there. Who knows?
Hell yeah.
And when we come back, we'll play the Record All Monsters game show, which today is called Fairy Tale or Fakey Tale. Hello, I'm Robert Kelly, host of Record All Monsters, and this is an ad for Anchor. That's right, an ad for Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. I was super intimidated to start this podcast until I heard about Anchor, and there are a number of things that made me feel more at ease to begin. First of all, it's free. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. They distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on multiple platforms, including whatever one you're listening to, and you can make money from your podcast easily with no minimum listenership. All you do is enter your information, Anchor takes care of the rest. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. This is the mandatory call for action that I have to read out now, but it's true. You can download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I've been Robert Kelly, host of Record All Monsters, and this has been an ad for Anchor.
Remote Pacific Island, where an expedition of world-famous scientists investigate incredible rumors of its fantastic mysteries and discover barren volcanic mountains surrounding strange green valleys, mammoth caves that breed giant mutations, vampire plants that devour humans. But most astounding of all, the tiniest women in all creation. Sacred beauties of a lost tribe which worships a monstrous creature. What is the secret of Mothra? What is the bizarre spell that awakens Mothra? As these doll-sized girls call to the super god from captivity. Mothra, whose revenge is more devastating than any man-made weapon. Mothra, who defies warplanes. Wrecks ocean liners. Smashes dams and bridges. Mothra, creating hurricanes. Mothra, enveloped in a shell that no human force can penetrate. Mothra, indestructible, all-powerful, indescribable. What kind of creature is this god monster, Mothra?
Hello and welcome back to Record All Monsters, where we are still here with Austin Pfhorbear Douglas Ford.
I love that.
That's how I'm going to credit you on the
Please do.
We'll make sure I have Pfhorbear spelled correctly.
Yeah, good luck.
So Austin, we play a game here, and it's different pretty much every time, of tangentially related trivia that is, again, just barest of strands,
of course,
connecting to the movie we just watched.
Okay.
So today's movie featured some fairies and an overall fairy tale tone. Well, the way we think of fairy tales now. Initially, fairy tales were pretty terrifying, and featured far fewer singing princesses, and a lot more fart jokes and weird sex. Like an R-rated Shrek 2. One of the best and earliest examples is Jean-Baptiste Basile's Pentamorone, or The Tale of Tales, in which the cursed princess Zoza, who can't laugh until she witnesses an old lady get mad that someone broke her jug of oil. The old lady turns out to be a witch who curses her to only marry a prince who's asleep forever and will only wake up when she fills the jar with 3 days' worth of tears. Are you still with me?
Mm-hmm.
She falls asleep before crying the last few drops, when another woman cries the last couple of tears and steals the prince away. She infiltrates their house, disguised as one of 10 female storytellers to entertain the now pregnant new queen. These stories are absolutely cuckoo bananas, as if what has just preceded is not. So cuckoo bananas, in fact, are these stories that you would swear I was making them up. So I made some up. In today's game, Fairy Tale or Fakey Tale, I'll read you the summary of a fairy tale. Your job is to tell me if it's actually part of the Pentamorone, or if I'm pulling your legs.
I'm in love with this because I already thought the one you were telling me was fake.
It's there. It's the framing story. If you lose, your hands will be cut off and fed to donkeys. Just kidding. There are no prizes or penalties.
Awesome.
Okay, we only have 2.
When does that happen in?
Off the top of my head, it's commonly called the Golden Hands.
Okay.
But there's so many variations, and I really should have, knowing that I referenced it, refresh myself on that particular story.
I have to ask, was the Shrek 2 reference already baked into that?
Oh yeah,
Amazing.
I'm not going to show you the answers, but you can see it, like an R-rated Shrek 2 right there in the third line.
Oh my gosh. That's incredible.
Yeah, when you said Shrek, I was just like, wow. Chef's kiss. Okay, first of 2 questions. A guy who is done, and who everyone hates because he is done, including his own mother, and also he is ugly, does a favor for some fairies while he is out gathering wood. They give him a magic charm so that all of his wishes come true. He wishes for the wood he was carrying to carry him, and a sad princess laughs at him, riding the wood like a horse. They get married against her father's wishes, so he drowns them in a barrel. The ugly man uses his charm to turn the barrel into a boat, and they escape and live happily ever after. Is this a real fairy tale from the Tale of Tales, or a fakey tale? To answer it's real, say fairy tale. To answer it's not, say fakey tale.
I'm gonna say Fakey Tale.
Austin, that is real.
Damn.
It is called
It had too happy of an ending.
Peruento. It's a real story from the Pentamorone. It's the 3rd story told on the first day.
Interesting.
All right, this is the last one. If you get this one right, you split the difference. If you get it wrong, you lose.
Only one hand if I get it right.
Irredeemably. Irredeemably. You can't
Never
come
allowed
back.
back on.
Can't come back. Actually, you can, because there are no real penalties.
You still get food.
Yeah, I mean, we're still going to feed you. So, after astrologers prophesied danger in the form of a flax splinter for a king's newborn daughter, he bans all flax from his house. As a young woman, she still manages to get some flax under her fingernail and dies, maybe. Years later, a king finds her body and, we'll say, takes advantage of her. 9 months after that, she has 2 babies, who suck the flax from her finger and wake her up. When the king returns, he sees her and her kids and brings them to his castle to live. His wife gets jealous, for what are extremely valid reasons, and tries to have the girl and her kids cooked. But the chef saves them. The king then has his wife killed and marries the girl he raped in the woods.
Ugh.
Is this a real fairy tale from the Tale of Tales, or a fakey tale?
I'm gonna say it's a fairy tale.
That is a real fairy tale.
Insane.
Sun, Moon, and Talia is a real story from the Pentamerone. It's the 5th story of the 5th day. It's also the earliest recorded version of Sleeping Beauty.
Oh, man.
Amazing. Oh my gosh.
And you'll notice that I used 2 real stories from the Pentamerone because I could not come up with anything as bonkers.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, man. Was like, if that one had been fake, I was like, you need to write that one out, man. Like, I couldn't. You couldn't put me in a room for long enough to come up with something that batshit crazy.
They're amazing. The Pentamerone, I highly recommend that book for anyone with any interest in folklore or fairy tales because it is bonkers and it has some of the earliest versions of some very well-known fairy tales, including Rapunzel and Sleeping Beauty. And
I will have to check it out.
It is bizarre.
So it's like the Canterbury Tales, where like people are telling stories.
Yeah, so it's really kind of set up more like the Arabian Nights.
Okay.
In that it's there's a framing story about a mad monarch who wants fairy tales told to them.
Gotcha.
But I dearly love it. There was a movie made from 3 of the stories in like 2012 starring John C. Reilly.
What?
Among others, and Selma Hayek, called The Tale of Tales. And it's very good. It's very good. And there are some other bonkers stories in there. I avoided the stories from that one in case I was
familiar with it.
But yeah, it's bonkers.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to check out the book and the movie. I love a John C. Reilly.
It's available at our library. Only because I pestered the woman who was in charge of the nonfiction ordering for like a month and like was telling her about the cultural importance of this book. Because fairy tales are my other thing. It's giant monsters and fairy tales.
Absolutely.
And today I think I demonstrated quite an overlap.
I thought it was a perfectly succinct overlap.
Well, Austin, can you tell the people where they can find you on the internet?
Yeah, absolutely. So I stream, the way I like to say it is at least 3 days a week, typically more, over at twitch.tv/Pfhorbear. That's twitch.tv/PFHORBEAR, and youtube.com/Pfhorbear. And you can listen or watch me tweet about like video games and politics and like cute TikTok people over at twitter.com/Pfhorbear.
All right, and we'll catch up with you all after the weird transition noise that I like to use. Okay, so that was Mothra, and that was Austin. He'll be back in a little while. We're going to bring him back to talk about the sequel to this movie, Mothra vs. Godzilla. Next week, we'll have a monster mailbag. And the week after that, we'll be talking about the original King Kong vs. Godzilla with returning guest Nathaniel Rossmith and new guest John Margheim. He's got a theater background and great level of film literacy. So he was a lot of fun to talk to. He's also a good friend of mine in the real world outside of this podcast. So, let's see. What other housekeeping is there? We have a website. It's called recordallmonsters.wordpress.com. And we have a Twitter, which is @MonstersRecord, and we have an Instagram, which is @recordallmonsters.pod. And guess what? If you search Record All Monsters Podcast on Facebook, it's the first thing that comes up. Also, this is exciting. I did a Google search on us the other day, and we are the first 8 results, mostly the first page, if you Google Record All Monsters. That used to not be the case, and now it is, and that's very exciting to me. Also, we're just really grateful for the reach we're getting as a show. I was going over some of the metrics yesterday, and that's mostly pretty boring, and I generally wouldn't bother you guys with that. But we are heard now in 14 countries in the U.S., Canada, Argentina, Ireland, United Kingdom, Sweden, Germany, Japan, Ecuador, Australia, Republic of Lithuania, Vietnam, Italy, and France. So shout out to all of you around the world listening to Record All Monsters. And I'd like to remind all of you that the Rondo voting is happening for 9 more days after this. Sunday, April 25th is the last day to vote. Voting ends midnight your time. All you have to do is copy the ballot from rondoaward.com and just select your answers and send it in an email to Tarako@aol.com. I'm really excited about the era of films coming up. We're right at the beginning, pretty much, of the golden age of Japanese giant monster movies. And it's just going to be really fun going over these next few episodes up until the end of this season. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have a couple surprises in store for the very end for this season's finale. And production on season 2 will be starting not too long after that. And at that time, I'll put out a list of the films we'll be covering. But until then, well, not until then, until next week when we come back with a monster mailbag, remember that monsters are your friends.